You're running a successful consulting business, but something's not right. You're working more hours, but not seeing the proportional growth. Every decision still comes through you. Every proposal needs your touch. You know there's a better way. You're not just sure what it is. You're listening to the Paul Higgins podcast. I'm Paul, and I help consultants build businesses that don't require them to be at the center of everything. I spent 18 years at Coca-Cola, then built and sold my own consulting business. Along the way, I learned that working harder isn't the answer. Building better systems is. Each week, I sit down with consultants who's cracked the code on scalable growth and experts who support them. Real conversations and how they broke through the bottleneck and built businesses that work without them. Let's dive in. Struggling to differentiate yourself in a crowded consulting market while platforms and AI tools promise to solve everything? Many consultants get trapped selling time instead of outcomes, missing the real leverage that comes from understanding how ecosystems actually work. Hello, I'm Paul and welcome to my podcast, episode number 642. And in this episode, I talked to Sarah McDevitt from HubSpot. And you're going to learn from Sarah many things. It was a brilliant conversation, but in particular, how to use AI to democratize client insights and validate your strategies faster than traditional research, why data structure trumps AI magic every time, and how to position this unsexy truth as valuable, and the difference between being a platform expert versus a trusted business growth advisor who asks the deeper questions. Sarah heads HubSpot's partner experience team with 16 years of agency experience and 7 inside HubSpot platform ecosystem. I'll now hand you over to Sarah from HubSpot. Great to have you here, Sarah.
Thanks for having me.
I'm very, very excited because I've been trying to get someone from HubSpot and someone in the partner ecosystem for so long. And I know I tried a very naff ploy to say that, you know, I was O'Higgins my family was O'Higgins and we're from Ireland originally. And when that, because I thought no one else would be that daft to do that. Anyway, I did, and you fell for it, and here you are.
Oh, yeah.
So we're gonna talk about partners, but every ecosystem's got slightly different view on partners. Sometimes it's like tech stack to tech stack. Sometimes it's, you know, looking after the partner ecosystem. Sort of what's your version of partners and what's your role in that version?
Yeah, from a HubSpot point of view, our partners are hugely important, I think, to how we scale as a business. They play multiple roles, I would say, in the business. They're important in terms of finding net new opportunities for us in HubSpot. So they're obviously out there as trusted advisors. I mean, I think like the wonderful thing about partners is a customer comes with a particular problem, and a good partner will look to solve the problem. And we will just happen, hopefully, to be the solution to that problem. So like when it comes in terms of those conversations with customers, what's right for them, and really like bringing them into the HubSpot community by being the right fit, have the right product fit. The other thing is they are hugely important to how we implement HubSpot for customers more broadly. Again, you know, the biggest thing for businesses, as you will know, in terms of like taking on any new SaaS product is how do I get it implemented? How do I see adoption across my business? And ultimately, you want to see time to value. Like you don't want to be hanging around going, I've now invested in this super expensive thing that I'm paying for and I'm not seeing any return for it. Partners are the link between kind of when you see the opportunity with the software and when you realize its full potential. And for me, that's kind of where they are so important. In terms of my role in HubSpot, I would position myself as a listener of people and partners. I lead the partner experience team.
Yes.
And my team do a few things, right? So we run the partner advisory councils because, you know, what our partners say, you know, is important to us. And we want to make sure that that's being fed up to the rest of the business in terms of how we make decisions. And more importantly, they have insight on the ground that we may not potentially have when it comes to different markets, different cultural nuances. That voice is very, very important within HubSpot. And we also then do a pulse survey, which again goes a little bit more in depth about, how our partners are feeling in the ecosystem. And we use that within the business to help support and validate some of the decisions we make. Just in general, like being a giant ear of listening to our partners is like super important. Then we play an important role in how HubSpotters and partners work together. HubSpotters that are, the CSMs, through to our growth specialists, through to product. So connecting those two sides in how we go to market together is really important. And, listen, life would be perfect if everything was frictionless and there was no issues with that. But, anything that involves humans involves friction, and that is healthy friction. We play a role in really creating like guidelines that make both sides accountable
Yes.
and making sure, that we are creating a ecosystem that is based on quality for our customers, because we are based, HubSpot is very much focused on solving for the customer.
Yes.
So we want to make sure that the people who are in our ecosystem are good for our customers, and that they are good partners of ours in terms of how we go to, and how to make sure we are good partners to those partners, because we believe that HubSpot is the best place to grow your business as a partner. And we want to make sure that we're connecting that promise with the reality, but that's always a work in progress.
Great. Well, we'll dive a little bit into the success of partners in a moment, but I'll just go back to the point around the advisory councils. I know that most of the major platforms, Salesforce, NetSuite, etc., have their version. What makes the HubSpot one unique? And the reason I asked this question, just a reminder, we're listening to Sarah on episode 642, is that you may be a Salesforce partner thinking to expand into HubSpot, or you may be in another ecosystem thinking, should I go into HubSpot? And you may be new to HubSpot, so you won't know. So that's sort of the context. But tell us a little bit about what makes your advisory councils different to, say, some of the other SaaS platforms.
I would say that our partner advisory councils have been on a journey of evolution. And one of the things that's really hypercharged them, I would say, is AI.
Yes.
We use AI in a way that democratizes the information that we get from those packs and distributes it within our business. For example, we use things like Notebook LM, where we upload all of the feedback we're getting from the partner advisory councils, so that any HubSpotter can pose a question related to a particular topic and get a sense or a sentiment of how our partners are feeling about that particular topic. And there's loads of different ways to cut the data, but we found like that the AI just really does allow you to bring the information of the partners in general and their sentiment to the front line. What it also means is that when we're making decisions, and we're moving at ferocious speed, all of us now in this world, it means that you can sense check broad ideas against partner sentiment very quickly without having to spin up an entire research project around that. Because the chances are someone will likely have asked a question or made a comment that's very closely related to what you're thinking about. And so it means that our leaders in HubSpot can move forward with speed, both with the, I suppose, security that they will have at least had that voice of the partner in the back of their head that they can validate some of their thoughts with relatively quickly.
Yeah, I love that. I know that for myself and the clients that I work with, well, I'll talk specifically for me, but it relates to the clients, is I have an ideal client project. I have it across multiple, Claude, Google, Gemini, and ChatGPT. And whenever I finish something, I then put it through that, and that's basically taking all my phone, all the Zoom calls, etc., that I've had with real clients, and then cross-pollinating that. And it's incredible. What I think is a great idea, I get corrected more than not. So it's really smart you've done that. Have you also put the historical survey data in there as well to?
So I think like survey data is a little bit different, because the unstructured data actually is an ideal suit for things like Notebook LM, for sure. I think when you think about survey data, there's nuance to that and how you cut it and the way the data is looked at and who's responding to the data and is it representative of the entire community. So that's something that we're in the early stages of understanding, how we put that in a way that it's not going to skew the data. It's not going to drive everyone absolutely insane going like, is this true or correct? So what I would say is Long term, the intention certainly would be to try and do that. But I think we just need to make sure that we're happy that we can validate the outputs
Yes.
if we do that. And listen, in some ways, Claude and other AI is like humans. It does hallucinate, and sure, humans hallucinate at the best of times about what they think they heard or
Most
the
of
way
the
they
time.
interpreted things most of the time. So, we just need, I think, more testing to make sure that it is not leading us down the garden path, so to speak, when it comes to the sentiment of partners. I just find the unstructured piece is a little bit easier to manage because it
Yes.
is just a sentiment as opposed
Yes.
to, kind of like statistically of value.
And I can't remember the name. You may know the person that set up his own HubSpot brain, a second brain, where he's taken all of his information through the years and allows his clients or potential clients to basically ask it questions. I know he's coming on the podcast, and I apologize for not remembering his name. Are you also setting that up from a partner point of view? So you've got that for the internal information with the advisory councils. What about the partners and their access to information? How's that changed with AI?
Yeah, so I think again, like we see the power in enabling our partners when it comes to AI usage. Now, we obviously have some people who are very early adopters and they are using AI externally to HubSpot. I think some of our partners have started to figure out like where the opportunity lies with AI. But what we want to do as HubSpot, and what we will continue to do more broadly, is to help our partners understand where the AI opportunity is. I think, I speak to partners every day, such as is my role. And so you're getting like a real sense of like what they're struggling with or what they're focused on. And so I think like we're at this interesting point in the journey with AI and partners, which is where do I invest in terms of tooling? So like where's the things I should invest in?
Yes.
But also I think you have, the gap between like larger companies who are trying to figure out do I bring in AI and then I create all this efficiency and then what do I do with the humans? And maybe that's not like a good PR story right now, right? And then you have smaller companies who are scaling, who are going, I don't need to hire a person. I can actually invest in a tool and that's going to help me like scale in a way that I don't have to make like the human investment, right? So
Yes.
I think like that's the stage we're at is like people are, at the stage where they're trying to go themselves, do I invest in this tooling or do I invest in a human?
Yes.
Or if I invest in this tooling, how does that impact my kind of human capital that I have at the minute? And we have to be like thoughtful about that, like across the board. Now, obviously, I come from the camp that I believe that AI should be used to amplify humanity, and I'm
Yes.
very much in that camp. And I've seen that partners doing that like super effectively, where for example, they're using AI to automate things that were the repeatable tasks, which we are
Yes.
all tired about hearing. That's what the AI is going to take, right? They're automating those, super repeatable tasks, but they're reinvesting the time in things like relationships.
Yes.
Because I think for me personally, one of the traps of this kind of AI evolution is that, some companies will find themselves going too far with the automation and potentially lose all differentiation about who they are as businesses because
Yes.
everyone's automating. So when everyone's automating, what makes you different? I think the companies and the partners that are going to be super successful are the ones that are able to balance and choose wisely. The guy said in Indiana Jones when Indy was trying to pick which chalice he was going for. So those that choose wisely are the people who are going to go right. Where is the human in this particular process, right? Where does the human fit? Where is the human going to add the most value and help us as a business? Where is the AI going to do a job better than the human that is going to allow us to reinvest in different areas? I think like businesses that really start to truly understand that they need to sit down and look at their processes and like really think about where the AI fits and where the human fits, they're the people that's going to be successful. And I think the people who just throw as much automation and AI at the wall to see how much of it sticks, they're probably going to look back 18 months from now or 2 years from now and go, oof, that was a misstep. Maybe we should have thought about that more thoughtfully.
Yeah, look, I think, I listened to someone, I've said it in the podcast before, that, they think there'll be a species change with the way that humans will eventually be replaced by the intelligence. And if that happens, that happens. But I think whilst we're still trying to put that thought off and being in the human element, I completely agree. And I look back when, I spent a lot of time with Coca-Cola, 18 years. And, the reason that we made so much profit is because we used technology to make that profit, because in the old days, it used to be available to the people who had the biggest checkbooks. So
Yeah.
that's how we improved our margin. I say we, I know it's they now, but it's hard after 18 years. Yeah, I think it's similar here, but it's, like if I look at what, you listening or watching can do with $20 a month for some of these LLMs at the moment, it's quite incredible. And I suppose that's a bit that I'm trying to look at is from a partner point of view, and I'm interested to get your perspective. Will the AI sit within platform? Will you use the platform and it'll get the data out of the SaaS, or will it be a messy combination of both? I'm just sort of interested as which
Mm.
way it'll go, and I'd love to get your view on that.
What I would probably reference is that this is again my personal view on this situation. I mean, Paul, who knows? Like, we get a crystal ball about what happened in the future. But I think if we think back to, our desk maybe 15 years ago, or even like, the house, you'd be going on holidays and you'd be saying, I need the camera, I need, to bring a book. I probably need to bring my CD, whatever it was, or my Walkman, right?
Yes.
So we had all these like separate things. We weren't even thinking about probably bringing a phone that was attached to the wall with a cord, and we definitely weren't thinking about bringing that, right? I think like now we have this rectangular device that sits in our pocket, and it has the phone on it, and it has our music, and it has pretty much our entire lives held on it. I mean, when I think about even personal documentation, my parents had one of those, folders. You remember those dusty
Yes.
folders that they would put all of their different pieces into? So much of who we are as humans is held on our smart devices in a way that is consolidated. And so I think like long term, I would probably see like more consolidation. But I think that we have some barriers to overcome in the meantime. Now, I say that because me and you sit here and tomorrow they could bring out something new that like completely changes the game again.
Yes.
And that in itself, poses a challenge for app partners, for example, right? So, you can develop off where there's a gap, and then the gap may not exist, and you've made that investment. So it's a challenge for like, people like app partners who are making their best guess about this is a particular, gap that we're seeing in the market, and they develop into that gap, and then progress sees that disappear, right? That's a challenge. That's a challenge for businesses like that. I think like long term, I do see those things like coming together. And there's people who are far smarter than me that would probably disagree with me for some reason I don't even know. But it makes sense, right? So like I'm just saying, like logically, it makes sense that if we have the capacity to bring those things together, that we will. But I think we have like bigger problems in the short term about things we need to sort out, right? We talk about like the power of AI, we talk about what it can do. And, what I would say with customers is no one's really buying AI right now, right? It's a bit like trying to sell a car to me because it has GPS in it. I fundamentally am buying the car because I want to get from A to B, right? I
Yes.
think customers are still coming with the same problems they were coming with 3 years ago when it comes to like, CRM and things like that. They still fundamentally have the same problems around wanting automation and organization, but they also still fundamentally have the same problem, which is data. So the data is still all over the place. It's super messy. It's unstructured. If I had a euro, we'll say, and you can say Australian dollar, and my euro probably worth a bit more. But if
I'd
we
much rather
said
you're a
that,
euro.
we said that for issues around the data being, messy, unstructured, not in the right form, and not maximizing what you can get out of a CRM. Now you then bring that forward to AI,
Yes.
and it's just like throwing good after bad because the AI just won't work with poor data. And that's not revolutionary to say. I think that is the reality. And I think that is a blockage to the adoption of AI for some people because they kind of inherently know that, right? And there's nothing sexy about let me sort out your data for you. That's just deeply unsexy, right?
Yes.
And also we have we have legacy systems that work off a particular data structure. There's potentially an unwillingness to change that data structure to align with how things need to align so that you can maximize AI tool usage. And I think, back to your earlier point about like consolidation, one of the things that will drive consolidation is the ability to do it where like legacy systems catch up. I mean, we have a lot of legacy systems that, aren't really at the races just yet,
Yeah.
maybe because of organizational cultural blockages around like AI, like burying their heads in the sand, whatever you want to call it. But I think like that is going to be one of the biggest challenges for all partners to overcome whatever ecosystem they're in is, data structure continues to be a huge opportunity, poor partners in the short term, but also a warning. Don't sell a sexy AI if the data is not right, because that will be your downfall. Like that will be the thing that is the difference between a customer saying, "But you said, and this AI is doesn't work or it's rubbish."
Yes. Yes.
That will be fundamentally because the underlying data wasn't sorted out first. And I think back, Paul, years ago when well before the HubSpot, I worked in media, and my boss at the time was like, "Oh, I think this internet thing," I'm giving away my age now, Paul, but I think this internet thing might take off. Does anyone know how we get the ads into the internet? Right. At the time, I was, buying radio and press and outdoor and all of the traditional, media types. I had a huge interest in how to get the ads into the internet. Right.
Yes.
And through, a stroke of luck and maybe, the time no one else qualified to do it, I was given the opportunity to do that. And so I spent a year just going around explaining what the internet was and
Yes.
how companies could use it and how it could be leveraged for organizations. And then after I spent the year of education, which is like a huge part that needs to be done for customers, I spent the next phase of that is almost in like internet readiness mode, right? So what are you going to need, right? So like this is like pre when you needed a mobile website. It was like they were different things, that kind of way. You
Yes.
couldn't have like something that adapted. It was a different thing. It became about like, what do I need to be ready to get myself on the internet? And then, how am I going to, once I get on the internet, what am I going to learn? Like, what are the insights I'm going to learn from the interactions with my content and my ads? And how am I going to use that data to figure out how does that impact like my back room, like in terms of like the products people are interested in, like, and how can I leverage that data then to make more targeted campaigns? I see a kind of similar trend when it comes to AI, right? Is like we need people to understand what it is, what it can do. We need people to be ready. And part of that readiness is around data structure so they can maximize it. And then that's where kind of the learning starts. I think, we have some partners who are doing a great job at the minute because what they're doing is they're embracing the AI tools within HubSpot, for example, and they're
Yes.
figuring out how they deliver more value, not
Yes.
replace things, right? So
Yes.
I think like they're the people who are doing a really good job, but they're also the people who are leading with business strategy first
Yes.
and then figuring out how they apply the technology to solve those customers' problems.
Totally agree. And I love the comment the other day. Sam Altman said it's AI is like a transistor, right? When the transistor came out, no one, initially everyone thought it was fantastic, but then it just became part of everything, right? You didn't talk about the transistor anymore. You talked about the radio or the microwave or whatever, right? And I
Yeah, yeah.
think I think that's, to your point, that's, what's happening. I think the other thing is there are some brilliant examples. I work with some great HubSpot partners where one, for example, the research, you talked about the research prior and tapping in and using AI, Notebook LM, etc. He's, let's say you do a persona and an ideal client profile, etc., and you need to do all that research and it'll take, 4 weeks and it'll cost, tens of thousands of dollars. Now you can do it a lot quicker. But the other thing is it costs you a lot less to do it. So therefore, instead of costing a client 10,000, it's now 4,000 or 2,000 or whatever. The agency's maintaining their margin, but it just gets you to the end point, which is what's the result, right? Because people, like you said, it doesn't matter. The research is only there to make sure you get a better result, a better outcome. And I think some agencies, because I work with a lot of AI consultants as well, though agencies and now they're AI consultants. And I'm a bit like you. I'm like, just be careful because once it loses its shine or it migrates or whatever happens, you've lost
Yeah.
the core reason you're here, which is to get business outcomes. And, from my corporate experience, the hard thing is to show an ROI. And I listen to Bloomberg every day, and even now they're saying, with all the money that's gone into AI, it's still hard to determine what is the actual payback, what's the outcome. And I think that sort of happens at a client level, right? I agree with you. Stick to the big things that won't ever change, but this just helps you get there quicker. As you said, it helps a human get better outcomes, but it also helps a business to get better outcomes. I think that's in the right space. You sort of talked about the partners that are taking it on. That's a key success part at the moment. What else, given your experience of, 16 years in agency land and now 7, some would say on the dark side, some people would say on the bright side. I've been
Yeah.
in
The orange
the
side of things, yeah.
yeah, correct, in the SaaS. What other things you see great partners do that many miss?
I think, as I said, like focusing on data quality and preparation is definitely a
Yep.
secret weapon. And I think like good partners who are able to not just like say to customers, yeah, your data sucks and like you really need to sort that out. I mean, it's explaining the why behind it, and also not just the why behind the structure, but what the opportunity is with the investment in the structure. Like, so I think that's like super, super important. I also think that, certainly from my perspective, I can see partners that build like genuine relationships with their customers and they have like longer relationships. That ultimately, survives competitive pressure, whether it's like around pricing or like anything else. I think that's really important. But also, like, you mentioned earlier there that, something that used to maybe cost 10 cost 4.
Yes.
So I think the partners who are doing like it right are saying, yeah, that costs 4 now, but we've got this other problem over here. Like, and now we have the investment to actually like sort that problem out. Like looking at a customer holistically and going beyond kind of what is in front of them is so, so important. And, the partners that I think like will do so, so well and do well, and, I see this every day, is, and I have this really poor analogy, Paul, that I'm going to give you because
Sure.
I think it's relevant, right? A partner that it relies too heavily on being an expert in the platform, right? They're the people who, you buy a toaster and they'll read you the manual and they're like, there's a toaster. This is what it does. It'll toast bread, right? I think that the partners who like really, really succeed are the partners where a customer comes and says, I need a way to cook bread. And the partner is able to ask questions. Well, do you want that integrated into your kitchen? Like, what kind of bread is it? What size is the bread? Like, who else is going to be eating the bread? So I think like the partners who were super successful are going like even a step further, Paul, and going, are you sure it's bread you want? Right? Like, are you sure that's what the solution to this problem is? Right? So I think like the partners who ask the questions, who are like really asking thoughtful questions, getting customers to think about not just the now, but also the long term of adoption across the organization. Because if you think about like training just one team within a business around like how to use the toaster, you're very exposed to that POC going. And then like the next thing that comes along is like maybe a preference. I think the partners who are like embedding themselves in businesses, understanding like, what are the different people across the business, how can the platform be used for them so that they can see value reflected in their own unique needs. I think they're the partners that are super successful. They have to be curious, they have to experiment. You see some partners who will rely on being like kind of HubSpot experts rather than being business growth experts, right? Which I
Yes.
think like is what successful partners do. And partners who avoid the hard conversation. They want to do the jazz hands of like, here's this magic AI thing and AI and the AI. That's not addressing like some of the hard conversations that will probably appear in the future if you don't have them in that moment.
Yeah, look, beautifully said. And, I suppose my experience being from the Coca-Cola company, which, really started this whole product brand and then someone else does all the implementation with the customer, right? That was the model that they invented. I was in it for 18 years. But I remember back in 2001, the second largest burger chain in Australia, which is aligned to a global entity, said, we want the lowest price and we want the
Mm.
same price that the one with the big golden arches has got. I'm like, well, if you give me the volume, I'm happy to give you that price. And I said, this is pointless. We know where this is going, right? But I said, how much money do you want? And they said, whatever. I said, okay, what about if I double that? And they said, yeah, sure. Here we go, another salesman. And I said, no, look, this is what we're going to do. And I'd seen it somewhere else in the world, and that's benefit of being in a system like HubSpot where people can learn from you. You don't have to do it all yourself. Is we mined all of their total transaction data and found the profit. It was actually even more than I'd predicted for them without changing our price, right? And I think that's the message that I say to people all the time. Like you said, you're not a HubSpot partner. You are someone that solves a certain problem for a set of clients, and you've cracked that code and you can get them there faster than they can themselves. And I think
Yeah.
that's exactly, and it's brilliant to hear it from a partner, because I know there's a lot of other ecosystems I deal with are still in selling license mode and still in, it's transaction mode, right? And I think
Yeah.
your growth is, your success is based on that principle, I think. The last thing I want to do before we go to the rapid fire is there's a long tail of partners. And I know there's some changes to the HubSpot ecosystem around, length of license. And I just wondered, you would have been at the forefront of that. Certainly, what's been the net outcome out of that? Because a lot of people sort of declared doom and gloom, etc. But I got the feeling it didn't play out that way, and you're closest to it. So tell us, what was the strategy and how has it played out the way you thought?
Yeah, I mean, I think listen, it was a fairly significant change for our legacy partners, and I wouldn't in any way ever lessen that on them because that was like a significant impact on their business. However, the reasoning behind it was a reason of growth and investment. So, what we wanted to do was to make sure that we were using the resources we had to best invest in the ecosystem and the partners that are partners with HubSpot, right? And so our legacy model didn't really solve for that. It didn't help us reinvest in the people who were the future, basically, right? This is allowing us, I suppose, to invest in partners to say like your job now is translating AI insights into business action, right? That there's like a an investment that we're doing, like helping customers understand what the data means in context and really help them being the bridge between what AI can do and what businesses should do, right?
Yes.
So had we not made some difficult calls in our partner program and really, really thoughtful, I will say, and if there's one thing for our partner program, I would say is we don't do easy things. Like we do things that are hard and that some other ecosystems aren't attempting to do. And that's why I love HubSpot and that's why I continue to work here. Like, we have a leader in Angie O'Dowd who is interested in doing things that are innovative, like for ecosystems. And I think that partners can see that. Now, in terms of like how it's panned out, I would say like any relationship, it's hard. People are upset.
Yes.
People, talk through it. They still see the opportunity. I mean, we did an IDC report earlier this year, maybe the end of last year, and it's a $34 billion opportunity for our partners. It's significant. Our partners, maybe they disagree with me, but I think our partners genuinely like us and they like working with HubSpotters and HubSpot. They know that we are a company who actually is at the very heart of it about supporting small business growth, right?
Yes.
It's true for our customers and they are businesses and we want to see them grow too. So I think like a lot of what we try to do like does align with that. We've come out the other side of it and we continue to invest. And I think like if you want trust in any walk of life, what you do is you follow through on what you said you'd do and you follow through in your commitments. And I think that's what we've continued to do is we've said we're investing, we've demonstrated that by the things that we've done, and we have been true to our word. Does everything go 100% right all the time? No. I mean, I think that just proves where it's not AI taking over, like, there's humans behind it. But I would tell you that when it comes to our partners, I laugh and cry with them in equal measure because many of our partners have been with us for a very, very long time. And, when I talk to partners, they'll say like HubSpot, I went with HubSpot. It's got my, daughter through college. It's got the, it's paid for the mortgage. It's whatever. So we are deeply like connected with them as individuals and families and businesses. That makes everyone in the partner program at HubSpot want to do our very best for those partners because we really do believe in what we're doing.
We've soon, I don't know, in the next month or so, we're going to be having partner number 3. I'll just say her name's Rachel, and she's coming in and she's going to talk about those first partner meetings that ever occurred with the founders. So it'll be interesting to hear her perspective. But yes, she's been there, I think, 17 years or whatever the figure is. So it's brilliant. What we'll do is pause, thank our sponsors, and then we'll come back for the rapid fire. Brilliant execution, terrible strategy. You can solve any client problem, but you're stuck in the same revenue patterns, same deal sizes, same time for money trap. I'm Paul, and I built and sold a 7-figure consulting business, but here's what I've learned mentoring other consultants. The real breakthroughs happen when you combine my experience with live problem solving of people going through exactly what you're facing now. In my group program, Steve works through his VA delegation challenge with Jed. Jed shares what's actually working. Andrew tests his pricing strategy with Casey, and Casey demonstrates his client onboarding system. Everyone's figuring it out together with my guidance based on what I learned the hard way. It's not theory, it's real-time strategic thinking with consultants in the trenches plus someone who's already made the journey. Stop grinding alone. Start thinking strategically. Go to paulhigginsmentoring.com/WWM. That's paulhigginsmentoring.com/WWM. So Sarah, ready for the rapid fire?
Can't wait.
All right. Well, as some of your ancestors would say, a sip of beer and having O'Higgins is what we used to be called, and we once owned a large pub in Killarney. So I'll keep that theme going. AI, we've talked a lot about it. Other than what's in product with HubSpot, what are some of the, and you mentioned Notebook LM, what are some of the other tools that you're really fascinated with at the moment?
So I'm obsessed with, you know what, Paul, I don't even know if it like technically falls into the AI field, but I use it 50 million times a day. It's an app called Speechify. And I don't know if you're familiar with Speechify. I'm actually dyslexic, and so I use it to like read a lot of documentation to me and check things. So Speechify.
Yeah, brilliant. And the next one is, what's a go-to-market that surprised you at the moment that's working for HubSpot partners?
The go-to-market is, I would say, to solve the problem and then sprinkle on the AI magic once you have the customer on the solid foundations that you have. You're all over their problem.
And you got that data correct. The partner ecosystem, where do you go to learn more about improving the partner ecosystem?
I use Partnership Leaders. So it's great. It's great in terms of like a community of thought leadership for other partner programs.
Yep, great. And last but not least, like I said, 7 years, HubSpot, 16 agency. You must have started very, very young. What do you know now that you wish you had known earlier?
People are people. And, you know, the problems they're having often aren't actually the problem they're telling you. You have to go deeper to figure out what the true problem is. And that's the problem you focus on solving.
Brilliant. Well, it's been wonderful having you on, Sarah. And maybe one day we can get you back and certainly talk about this evolution of the app and platform. I think that's a great topic that we could dig into on another time. But yeah, thanks a lot for coming on today.
Thanks a million for having me, Paul.
What a great interview with Sarah. Insights really hit home, and what a fantastic interview it was. And the future belongs to those who solve business problems first, then apply the right technology. Focus on being curious, asking deeper questions, and embedding yourself in your client's long-term success. Reach out to Sarah McDevitt on LinkedIn and thank her and ask her questions. She's got loads of experience, that 23 years in the industry. You can watch this episode on the Paul Higgins Mentoring channel and see Sarah, and I will see you next time on my podcast, the Paul Higgins Podcast. What stood out to you from today's conversations? Look, building a consulting practice that doesn't resolve around you isn't easy, but it's possible. The consultants and the experts I interview have proven that. Every week I share insights from those conversations, practical strategies from people who've actually done it or help others do it. If you want to learn more from this experience, get my newsletter at paulhigginsmentoring.com/newsletter. Just practical stuff from consultants who's figured it all out. And if this was helpful, share it with another consultant. We're all trying to crack the same code. Thanks for listening.